Anyways, I close up here. I want to talk to you about our song of the day today, and make it the whole thing as a single closing segment. This is by The Fray, and it's called "How to Save a Life." I used it about 4 years ago in a video that people thought was about gun control, and it was really how about how you can sell any bad idea for the government to intervene in something and make it sound good using actual facts. And it was comparing how, what if we applied gun control logic to stairs? And I gave out facts and figures of how many people die and are injured in stairs and how many of them are children. And I'll put a link in today's show notes to that video. It's about 19 minutes long. You can go watch it. I talk about the development of other governmental agencies and things like that. And everybody thought it was about gun control. And it really wasn't, because the gun control debate back then, much as it is today, was not dominated by the same issue that it is today, that nobody wants to talk about. Why are our children killing themselves? And some of those that want to kill themselves are taking others with them. When you do the math, it turns out that about one in about, 1,000 kids that decides, I don't want to be here anymore, 1 in 1,000 says, maybe I'll take some people with me. I don't think that's a shocking statistic. That 1 in 1,000 suicidal people might want to take somebody with them. Is anybody actually surprised by that statistic alone? Before I go into this song, though, and how it applies to this issue, I'd like to set the stage with something that I've heard put. I've heard a lot of people explain this issue before, but I've never heard it put so succinctly and eloquently as Vin Armani put it, as it relates to a totally different issue. Recently at Liberty Forum, he talked about Gandhi's march to the sea and what that was really all about. And he brought up a word that I've heard many times that I never really contemplated. I never really thought much, about the base story of Gandhi and passive resistance and things like that, nonviolent resistance. But the term he taught us about is called satyagraha, which literally means to hold on to truth. And Vin told the story of Gandhi like I'd never heard it told before. And I really never dug deep into the Gandhi story. But the basic concept of the whole thing that started a movement was that it was illegal in India to make salt. And Indians were dying of iodine deficiency because they didn't have any salt. Because the British had a monopoly on salt, and they made it illegal for Indians to make salt. Now, I don't know if you know this, but India is basically like a peninsula. It's surrounded on three sides by ocean. And if you have ocean, you can make salt. And there had been a great tradition of making salt in India, but no Indian could make salt. So he puts on a loincloth, gets a few of his followers together, puts on some sandals, walks over 200 miles, but announces in advance, I'm going to walk to the sea, and I'm going to make salt. And I'm holding on to my truth, that as a human being, as an Indian, these are our resources, and you have no right to prevent me from making salt. It was a simple truth, one truth to hang on to. And Vin delivered that message as a message of this is how you defend a liberty. You find a truth and you hold on to it. And he brought it into basically the non-aggression principle with anything that is an oppressive policy, such as you're going to prison for possessing a plant. And he explained it this way. I do agree with many things in the Declaration of Independence. He broke it down into bullet points and all. But one key thing in the Declaration of Independence that's universal, that almost everybody will agree upon, including the most virtue-signaling leftist, all men are created equal. They might want to change men to people. Fine, we can do that. All people are created equal. And then he followed that up with, and I do not have the right to use violence to interfere with any other adult's peaceful pursuit of fill in the blank. He used a couple things, including possess or smoke or eat a plant, choose their beverage of choice, etc. And the beauty of that was the consistency of the principle. Once you stood on that principle, you actually did not have to change the argument when somebody changed the issue. We as a society have agreed that an adult is a person age 18 or older. I do not have the right, we've also agreed that all people are created equal. We both agree that I do not have the right to use violence and force to interfere with any other adult's peaceful choices, pursuits, etc. And we've agreed that all men are created equal, all people are created equal. Therefore, if I do not have that right, no one else does either. But what I've realized, when someone really nails a principle, its application is broader than what it was intended for when they did it. And the concept here is holding on to the truth. And whether that's for liberty or whether that's for solving a problem, that principle works. And let's explain how that principle works with the problem of school shootings and how it ties into the phrase song, How to Save a Life. Going back to my video, I chose that song because, one, it worked with the emotional things I was trying to pull on to actually make you feel something at the beginning of this video, even though its premise is ridiculous. But it was also because of its underlying tone and something I said back then: school shootings are simply a symptom of suicide in our youth. It's another way of committing suicide. They're just taking people with them. And that song was about suicide and how we prevent it in our youth. And the key thing in this one was to be there for a person, to be their friend. There's a line in the song, and I would have stayed up with you all night if I had known how to save a life. This is a real song about a real incident of someone that the writer, the lead singer of the group, was in a camp with, who did kill themselves. And he realized later it seemed like there was nothing they could do. There was no manual for how to help somebody like this, but all he really needed was somebody to be there with him. So if we have a principle of hold on to the truth, and we have a problem that we have children killing themselves and others in our school system in such numbers that the system itself must be contributing to the problem. And therefore, our current methods and institution of education in America is causing children to kill themselves because of the way we're running it, and that some portion of them are then taking others with them, and that is our truth, then all of the noise around this issue falls to the side. And even when I agree with one side or the other, it's on a principle independent of the issue. Let's take in, for instance, right now, one of the solutions is what we need to arm teachers. We need to arm teachers. We need to arm teachers. Well, I am completely okay with teachers carrying, but it's nothing to do with school shootings. Since I also have the other truth, Vince, I don't have the right to violently interfere with another person's peaceful pursuit of happiness. And I believe in the right to possess, own, and carry a weapon. And institutions already exist to define what makes a person qualified in any state to be able to carry a weapon. Why would I say that doesn't apply to teachers? But I don't want to arm teachers because some teachers don't want to be armed. And I don't have a right to use force to make them be armed. Other people are saying we should put one meme going around today: put 3 armed out-of-work veterans in every school. Oh, great. So what you want to do is take all of our veterans that don't have a job, many of them with PTSD, arm them up and send them to our schools. Come on, liberty over safety much? Really? But I could come up with a lot of rebuttals to that. But if I hold on to the truth, our schools, our system of public education is being run in such a way that our children are killing themselves and others, I can simply say that not only does this proposal not address the problem, when we look at our schools, the reason this is the case, we're running them like prisons. So does putting armed personnel into the school in this manner make them more or less prison-like? What do you have at prisons? Armed guards, right? So it makes it more prison-like. So if we stick to the truth, we'll probably have more deaths, not less, by doing this. Even if in one instance here or one instance there, that armed guard might be in the right place at the right time to intervene with a shooter, since we ignore the truth, the core of the problem, we have a net loss of life. So when that's responded to with, what's the value of a life? You know, because I said, well, what about the cost? You need billions of dollars more stolen money to do this. What's the value of a life? Okay, now how is your argument different from the left's argument that if we can save a few lives by banning high-capacity magazines, it's worth doing? Or if we institute a very expensive licensing program to own a gun that does a better job of screening people out, even if some bad people still get guns, how does that not worth doing if it saves, I don't know, half of these students that were shot wouldn't have been? Even if it doesn't work perfect. See, when you're going from an emotional argument and ignoring the principle and the truth core problem, do you end up with two radically different suggestions, but then since you can't back them from the core of the truth of the problem, they end up with the same tactic, using emotion. What's the value of a life? Isn't it worth it to save even half? What if it's your child that comes home because we acted? What if your child that doesn't come home because we didn't? Those could be the talking points of either side. Why? Because neither's holding on to the truth. Because this truth here is hard and it's complicated. Let's look at this most recent shooter and examine what might have worked. Armed guards in the school. Well, they had 2. Well, maybe they should have 3. Okay. And if they had 3 and that didn't work, then the solution is 4? How many guards can we afford at schools? If we don't hold on to the truth, then we could ban high-capacity magazines. Well, people that'll break the law will go find high-capacity magazines and buy them anyway. But it would be harder for him. Okay, he'll use 10-round magazines. Well, that might have saved some lives. Yeah, it probably wouldn't have. And if a person's actually rational and understands this, they'd say, well, maybe we should just ban these assault rifles altogether. Okay, you can still go buy illegal guns. But maybe this one person wouldn't have been able to get an illegal gun. Okay, he probably would have jumped in a pickup truck, waited for recess, and drove through the crowd, and quite possibly, as we've seen happen in recent terrorist attacks, kill more people. And when you start to look at it, you realize like neither side of this debate on guns is holding on to truth, so they can't address the core problem. The core problem is, how does a 19-year-old person develop such sorrow and hatred and become such a broken person that their solution is to go get a gun or a truck or a bomb and kill others? And as I said yesterday, I guarantee you this guy's original plan was not to survive. Somewhere in this, he lost his nerve, dropped his gun, ran away and tried to blend in. But his plan wasn't to survive. You know it wasn't. If we hold on to the truth, how is this system killing people? Well, let's see what happened to this kid. He had problems. He was kind of socially awkward, didn't fit in. He's probably mocked and picked on throughout the entirety of his school career. Was adopted. His father died. Then his mother died. We call those triggers or stressors. Was kicked out of school, told to stay away. Basically told by the school, we don't like you. We think you're dangerous. We're throwing you away. What is the most likely thing that would have prevented this? Banning high-capacity magazines. One more armed guard in a school of 3,000 children than the 2 they already had. Or one person that would have told this guy, I can see you're having problems. I give a shit about you. Let me help you. You tell me, if you're going to be completely honest with yourself, Which one of those three things would have been most likely to prevent this person from using one form of violence or another from harming and killing a bunch of people? An armed guard, a ban on guns or gun accessories or gun parts or gun magazines or gun whatever, or one person that said, hey, what's wrong? How can I help you? And then when we hold on to truth, we see the clear answer. If we're going to have public schools, and I think getting rid of them would do a lot to prevent public school shootings, by the way. But then don't we owe it to ourselves to examine the core issue? Why are children choosing death over life? Why are they choosing to hang themselves, poison themselves, slit their wrists, drown themselves, suffocate themselves, kill themselves with a car, with exhaust, in numbers we've never seen in our history? And if that's the case, how are we remotely surprised that a very small percentage of them will take others with them? And then the solution isn't easy, but it's embarrassingly simple. Quoting Bill Mollison, while the problems in the world are increasingly complex, the solutions are embarrassingly simple. We have to change the dynamic that creates this. And will it stop all suicides? No. Will it stop all school shootings? No. But of the three tactics, less guns, more guns, hold on to truth, and address the problems in educational systems that cause students to have self-loathing, be tormented with bullying, and take their own lives, which one gives you the greatest impact? The one that holds on to the truth. And if we'll look at our problems and always drill down to the truth and hold on to that one truth, then we will always find that the best choice among all of them, no matter how difficult it may be to do, will be embarrassingly simple. That we let the problem build to where it is in the first place. You want solutions? When a child's being tormented, you don't worry about the fact that his ass in a seat represents a dollar sign for the school district. If he wants to leave to another school, you let him. That alone would probably have saved, of the 57,000 kids that took their own lives in the last 10 years, 10,000 kids. One choice, one simple thing, one easy thing to do, one simple thing. You're going to worry about 288? While 10,000 took their own lives because you felt it was okay to use extorted money as an excuse, because you might lose some of that extorted money to the other district, to hold a child captive in a place where he was tormented or she was tormented until they took their own life. And you want to talk to me about a magazine capacity? Because you want to ignore the truth. And the same thing for those of you on the right. Let's put more armed guards. All the teachers should have guns. You're ignoring those same 10,000 students. It's that simple. Is that enough? No. There's so much that needs to be done. But as long as we're taking all of this money from people and claiming to educate children, and in that time we're not educating children to be decent to each other. We're not educating children into how to seek help when they're being tormented. We're not educating children into how to uninsnare themselves from these points where they feel this way. We're not educating children into when to seek help. And we're not providing them a place to go seek help, because the average high school guidance counselor is about as qualified to counsel a person emotionally as the average guy that cleans toilets for a living. In fact, he'd probably do a better job. I had a bunch of things I was going to say there, but as I started thinking, I'm like, I'm insulting all these people because they probably do a better job. We can't claim to care about this issue if we won't hold on to the truth. Somebody commented yesterday after I talked about this on the site, and here's what they said. I shared what you posted on Facebook about this. I hope it starts a conversation. And my response was, I hope so too. That's all I want. All I want is for us to start having this conversation. Let's stop arguing about guns. That argument's going to be there forever. Let's stop. This one time. Let's not make this about this one time. Let's try a discussion about the truth. Let's try a discussion about the fact that our children are killing themselves. 54,000 in 10 years. One more damn time. Somehow I'm finding the strength to speak over my voice in this. 54,000 in 10 years. Compared to 288. Isn't it time for this discussion? You don't even have to attach it to the gun control discussion or to the Florida shooting. Start talking to your friends. Start talking to your family. Start calling the media. Write into your newspapers. Draw a very small connection. But just simply point out, most of these mass shootings are another form of suicide, and focus 99% on the truth. Our system of education has resulted in schools being run like minimum security prisons, and that has had a direct result in pushing suicide numbers in our youth through the roof. And 54,000 children chose death over the life that they had. It's time for this discussion. It's not easy, because every single one of us that's part of this society gets at least some piece of the blame. And that's why it's easier to blame an inanimate object, or it's easier just to blame the person that did the shooting. As though there's no connection between 54,000 people we see as victims and a handful of people we see as heartless killers that were always going to be that way. So that's what you have to ask yourself. Because I don't want mercy for this guy. They caught him alive. I want him in prison for the rest of his life. I actually don't want him executed. I think it's the easy way out. It's a coward's death. And it's how I feel when these guys shoot themselves or get shot. They never had to face justice. They never had to face their accusers. But I also want him alive so we can learn from him. I want him alive so our society can learn what caused the person who probably never would have done this to do it. Do you really think all of them, had they had a different environment, had they have different options, would have come to the same inevitable conclusion in their lives? Do you think when they were 5 years old, 6 years old, do you think they thought, one day I want to grow up and go down in a hail of bullets while I kill people? Or do you think something changed them? And do you think the child that put a belt around his neck and hung himself from the rod in his closet, or the girl that sat in a bathtub and slit her wrists with a razor blade, or the kid that just couldn't face going back to school one more time, so he looked up on YouTube how to tape a garden hose to the exhaust of his mother's car, put it through the window, shut the car on, turned the music on, and went to sleep for the last time. Do you think when they were 6 or 7 or 8 years old that they said, I can't wait one day to kill myself? Do you really think the two problems are separate? It's time for the conversation. And it's time to accept the fact that in almost every one of these instances, not the guarantee, some people are broken. Sometimes it's gone too far. Sometimes they're going to hurt people or themselves no matter what you try to do. But in the vast majority of cases, the one thing that would have made a difference would have been one person that reached out and said, I see you hurting. How can I help? With that, this has been Jack Spirko with another edition of the Survival Podcast, helping you figure out how to live that better life if times get tough, or even if they don't.